All right, everybody, welcome back. This is, the B2B Growth Lab for now is what we've decided to call it. And that's because I get to hang out with these B2B experts. This is episode 2, and we've just been in conversation about this stuff for a little while and decided as an experiment to have these conversations in front of other people. I figured we might as well share the insights and ideas that we're coming across in our group discussions. And so today, in the theme of B2B growth, we're talking about growth specifically. Now, the idea behind this is that growth takes leadership and that there's different types of leadership. That's why we have more than one person here to weigh in on it. But most importantly, that growth doesn't come from just pushing the pedal down, from putting your head down, or from, that classic Far Side cartoon, which is, of course, the school for the gifted and the kid just leaning full force down on a door that says pull. And this is something that I see all the time inside of smaller operations, mid-size operations, and, hear stories about inside of large scale operations, because what seems to happen is you get people who are in these different areas of expertise and they kind of get siloed and communication doesn't occur. And so then people end up working inside of isolation. And I think that's what we're here to solve, is like through the idea that we have discussions, we can create discussions and conversations in other places. So to move forward here, leadership is a multiplier or a roadblock. It's really a choice that we can make. And fundamentally, it is a factor inside of both the foundation and the scale that happens on top of that foundation. It takes stability both ways. So this week, I'm going to rely, on Rob, on Zach, especially you guys, on your experience inside of these companies and organizations, and have you break down just how effective leadership drives the entire fabric of a company forward, whether it's a better system, a better offer, more aligned growth, internal and external stuff. So yeah, with that, who wants to take the next step forward and say, what fundamentally you think about leadership and how it relates?
I want to validate your opening a little bit before we get into solutions here, Jacob, because the reality, if you trust McKinsey and Gallup and Zenger, Folkman, and others, engagement in the workforce 30%, the lowest in recorded history. Cost to turnover 213% of the average salary of the position you turn over. Multiply that by the number you're turning over. That's your total loaded cost of turnover. So there's a crisis right now in profitability. Companies want more from less. It's like we're trying to squeeze blood out of a stone, and the harder you squeeze, Gen Z especially, no thank you, I'm out. So they're suffering that turnover, they're suffering those costs, and that low engagement. If we don't solve for that 30%, I'm sorry to say that the trend towards small business and entrepreneurship is going to continue, and is going to be left in the dust our larger businesses. So spot on the intro.
I would maybe love to take a different session and have you whiteboard out some of that math and just like randomly pick like something from the S&P 500, something from way below that, something from the very bottom, and be like,
right,
dollars to donuts, this is how much it's hurting. Because I think that's brilliant the way you came up with that really simple formula.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing that really stuck out to me in the intro was the push-pull thing that you mentioned. And so many would tell you, like, giving feedback, you should use the SBI model, situation, behavior, impact. When you do that, that's a push. That's told from an authoritative position. Let's flip that over to a poll. This is the first modern solution. If you facilitate and you practice something called the grow method of coaching, speak entirely in questions, not in a passive aggressive way, but in a facilitative way. And you only share your ideas after asking if they would like to hear your ideas. You keep them in the driver's seat, responsible, respected, owning their outcomes. And what do you think the likelihood is they're actually going to deliver on the way forward that they planned? Way higher than if you told them. And we'll see that point 3 go to point 4, point 5 if leaders
Right.
start changing their coaching approach, right? No more SBI. Let's do grow from here forward.
I really like that perspective because in my experience, a lot of leaders do a very poor job of recognizing their role as a mentor for
Right.
their team. And that's one of the key things that I think that the younger generation especially is looking for, right? Like, let's be honest, the youngest generation, they're often called the most educated generation in history. We're a bunch of idiots. We like Gen Z honestly lacks common sense to a high degree. And that's why we need our mid and senior level managers to really step up and take that mentor role and recognize that your employees. So I take a slightly different perspective when it comes to employee employer relationships. I don't look at it as like we're building a team and a culture as much as I look at it as a transaction. And the way that I see it, and Rob, I know you're going to tear me apart on this, but just hear me out, okay? The way that I see it is if I'm an employer, I need to buy someone's time, money, and energy, their attention, their skill set, whatever. I need to buy that. What do I buy it with? With money. They need my money. What do they buy it with? Their time, their attention, their emotive energy, whatever. When we buy things, if we were to look at this relationship the same way I would look at it if I were a service-based business, then I would say, okay, what is the outcome they need me to provide in order for them to be satisfied in this situation? Well, they need mentoring, like I talked about. They need to know when they're doing a good job. They need to feel like the purpose of the company and the purpose of the role aligns with the goals that they've set with their life. If I can set those things up, then people will bang down my door to buy my money. And that I think is one of those things that I think people are missing. But Rob, I'd love your take on that because I think that you would have a really interesting perspective on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth there that the leaders who are trustworthy, are transparent, who develop those below them by coaching, by mentoring, who care and invest in the people in their charge, to use a slightly obscure term there, but that those are the people who never have a problem hiring. Do they have turnover? Yes. What flavor of turnover do they have? Well, I can't help it. My people all get promoted. They're all getting poached by other departments because I'm making them awesome. Right? So you're spot on. I love the perspective of it being kind of a trade-off and a transaction because that is the math that increasingly employees are doing since there's really no loyalty left in corporate
Yeah.
America. So
Yeah.
sadly, corporate America has reduced it to a simple transaction. And sorry, that's all you're paying me for is what they're hearing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I need to almost apologize for this because, Zach, you gave so much insight on the internal workings of a company. Like where my mind goes, because, I kind of prep for these things is like, Rob's the inside culture guy, Zach's the like, how do you relate to your customers guy? And, everything you said, it seems to me as well, like so true and so clear in terms of how there's got to be some sort of upfront, secondary, and let's say even hidden benefits to be here.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously not just about the wage, because the wage can be acquired anywhere. So how do you get people to stay? Right. And I do think you have to provide value to them that aligns with their values, that really, the stuff that you added on there, Rob, makes so much sense. Of like, I'm here to grow. I'm here to become a better person, a form of some sort of leader, develop myself inside of this organization. Just, yeah, it makes so much sense.
If you just start early in orientation by asking, now you've already hired them, right? They're in orientation. It's not the interview process. Now that you're here, that's wonderful. We're a week into it. You know where the food and the bathroom are, right? You got to log on. You have your IT gear, right? Now let's have a conversation about, what do you need from me so far? What are the gaps I don't know about, and how can I address those? Okay, we triage that. All right, let's look forward, right? The next 90 days. Yes. Okay, we have that plan done. Now talk to me about the next 3 to 5 years. Where do you want to be? And if you have that discussion early, what do they go home and talk about at the dinner table? Right. You won't believe it. You won't believe it. I'm only 3 weeks in. They're already talking about where I'm going to be in 5 years. And there was enough trust and safety that I felt, okay, this is incredible. I'm going to tell my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Well, and it's this investment too, right? Like, I'm showing I'm willing to invest in you. I'm going to put my cards on the table. I want you to stick around. Now, I need to know what you need me to do to make that happen, right? People aren't unreasonable. They're just guarded because they don't feel like they can trust you. But if you lay your cards on the table and say, listen, we spent a lot of money recruiting you. We need you to stick around, and I want to know what it's going to take to make that happen. This is a negotiation. We're going to work together. Like, I think that's what a lot of team members need. And obviously leadership on the team aspect is one side of that equation.
It's so brilliant. It reminds me of two different things. One of them is until he got above 350 employees inside of VaynerMedia, Gary Vee sat down and had a 1 hour one-on-one with every single person on the team. And he used that to develop the role that he hired for, which he defined as his CHO, his chief heart officer. And he's like, your job is to know each person in the company to this level, right? And that's all the knowledge I have of it, just surface level of what I've seen on a couple talks and interviews, and not what's actually going on inside the company, or what the binder that came with that job is. But it reminds me of something else, which is this 10X rule that I was reading about a couple of weeks ago. And like, we know the widely publicized and like, it's for growth and put your company on steroids. But what I was reading was in the context of product development, right? And so if I'm paying $100 a month for my software subscription, the company's job is to give me $1,000 a month of value. And, you've just spun this on its side for me, the two of you, with this conversation, because it's like, what's it like to take an employee and treat them that way? Right? Of like, my job with my business is to give you 10 times the value of your effort, your work, your labor here.
Absolutely. And, I think that when all of those expectations are clarified, I don't think that people want to violate those expectations. I think that employees genuinely want to do a good job. And I think, Rob, you talked about this last time. You lose your best employees because they feel like they're not doing a good job and they're tired of feeling like a failure.
Yeah. That's right. And if you treat them transactionally, how can they not feel like that when it's like, I'm not really that sure how you feel, but here's a beanbag chair. And, we have, soda in the fridge.
And that
funny example to totally validate what you guys are talking about. So I'll leave the names out of it to protect the guilty. let's just say my best friend worked for a company that owned by venture cap, and he was the top producer in a sales support role 2 years in a row. The only territory that produced positive net revenue growth for both years in a row.
Wow.
Right? He's that guy. What kind of merit increase did he get for the last 2 years? 0 and 0.
Wow.
What's the end of that story? He started his new job last week. Right? Your top performers have choice. They have the choice. And if you behave that way, you destine yourself to only having at best mediocrity. Worst case, bottom of the barrel, people who stay because they can't go anywhere else.
You know, I love that, because if we think about business, and I had a mentor who told me this, he drilled it into my head. He said, Zach, business is the privilege of serving your customers in exchange for their money.
Yes.
And like, it really is a privilege. And when you look at it that way, it's like, who do I want to handle my customers? Do I want the best of the best, or do I want someone who's going to half-ass it? The answer is I want the best of the best. Why? Because I know that they're going to recognize that privilege and treat it with the same level of intentionality that I would. And I think that, you know, we miss that because we so focus on, as employers, well, I've got to make it fit within this budget. Yeah, that's true, but good performers will make their budget and then some.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And I will say, I want to add, and maybe we're going to cover this in a minute, but I think that we're only talking about one half of the equation, which is the team. I think that good leadership also understands the customer to a very, very deep and intimate level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was waiting to go there. Absolutely. Like it's like you can't have the inside without the outside, right? Or something I learned about health a long time ago was that, you know, you can see your diet and your nutrition, that kind of stuff on the surface, right? And so if you look at the strength of a brand, or how other people speak about a company, or how they speak about it after no longer being a customer, and their reasoning behind it, I think all that stuff is baked into what you're talking about right there, Zach. And it's 100% true. And so I guess the question is, how do you see these leaders solving for that, right? If it's a struggle for somebody like Rob to get them to even talk to their people, then how do they get that communication chain going all the way out to the people who aren't even on the bus, or just on the outside of the bus watching it go by, the customers?
You know, I think it starts with you. If your team doesn't talk to your customers, when was the last time you got on the phone with your customers? When was the last time you talked to them, right? Because your team will only rise to your level, right? And if you're not regularly talking with your customers, or hiring someone like me to do it for you, because I know, right, managers are busy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not doing that, then you can't expect your team to do it.
The other part of this, there's a mindset to customer experience. And if you, as a coach, mentor, role model, you role model the mindset and the behavior that comes from it, you will get adoption. You will see people go, oh, I love how they just did that. Oh, how did you do that? Oh, wait. Right? So in a customer service perspective, how many times are you in a service perspective and the person behind the counter tells you what they can't do, or what policy won't allow them to do, or they start fighting with you? And it's systemic, but it's also quite personal.
I've got a trick question for the two of you. That is, do you think that a leader can be of such a high quality and like so concerned with the relational and the well-being, et cetera, of the people inside the company that it just happens to the customer as well without it having to be policy or put in place?
What do you think, Rob? I'll let you.
I think it's technically possible to do it just through culture without policy. I think it's possible. The bigger an org gets, the harder that is to do, though, right? Really easy if you're in an 8-person candle shop, right? You can do that all through just your own will and might and role model behaviorship and the servant leadership, et cetera, et cetera. If you just do it, you don't have to have a policy. You don't even have to articulate it. You just live it and people will follow. You get to 1,000 people, it's not going to work.
Right.
I would agree with that. I think that culture is policies and procedures, especially in smaller organizations, are meant to be guardrails when culture fails, realistically speaking. And I think that, that culture, as you increase the size of the organization, the culture is going to magnify. And it's not only going to magnify, it's going to ossify. So I don't know if you guys remember this. It was a couple of years ago. They did like the video a day in the life of a Twitter employee. And it was like, when the hell does she do any work? Like, she's doing these random meetings. She's getting smoothies. She's doing yoga. It's like, she's not doing any actual work. Like, she's not coding. She did like one meeting the whole day. And that was a symptom of a culture that started out being very much, we care about our employees, and getting magnified and ossified, so that it becomes this culture that is about the employee first and the customer second.
Right.
And I think that is kind of what you're bringing up here. It's like, eventually you get to a place where if the customer is not first, if you do not consistently put the customer first and make sure that every single employee on your team falls in love with your customers and the way that you help them, not necessarily your solution, right? But the way that you help them and the problem that they have. If your employee isn't doing that, then they're not a cultural fit, because the customer and the way that you solve the problem, the way that you help them, is the foundation of the culture, or it should be. That's how you build a culture that can grow.
Got it. Okay. And then an inquiry or a support ticket or that kind of stuff isn't an interruption to me time.
Exactly. It's the main event, because I can't believe that I get to help Jacob fix his LinkedIn broadcast issues. I'm so excited that I get to do that, because I get to help Jacob grow his brand. And that means X, Y, and Z, right? So you're falling in love with the person. The solution, we're solution agnostic. It's like whatever it takes to get that solution to happen. But it's about the person. And it's a lot easier to fall in love with a person than it is with a solution.
And to step that up to leaders.
Absolutely.
If you have a person who's in that service role, what should you be celebrating? And what should you be coaching? And what should you be role modeling, right? Get in the right mindset. Go do. Now you try. What did you see? Debrief, right? Like, to Zach's point about earlier, if you're not talking to any customers, what are you doing? But it's not to say that you want to sit in that seat all the time, but every once in a while, go on a ride along. Go shake some hands, right? Like, go take a phone call. And then do your call monitoring, and don't just walk around with sticks all the time. Swing some carrots, right? There's a high five to be had in a call center. There is a cocktail to be handed out at the sales conference, right? Like, come on, right? Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. Lead with positivity.
Well, and going full circle, right? Those are the kind of things that are very small but incredibly meaningful when it comes to the things that keep people around.
Yeah.
Huge. I was at a business. We had this divide between the production floor and kind of the office staff. Pretty common kind of divide in a complex organization. And we implemented this recognition program where every team member got $5 at the beginning of every month, but you couldn't keep it. You could give it away in any increment down to $1 to anybody else. You had to say thank you. You had to recognize what they did for you, right? It was a heading, like 2 sentences, and then a dollar amount, and you hit send, and it was gone, right? It was not laborious at all. And you say, well, it's $1, Rob. Come on, it's $1. And I would challenge you back. How much dopamine acetylcholine can an unexpected dollar produce? How
Right.
much? How much? And when you know it, if you can't hold on to the money, how much more likely are you to give it away every month? And by the end of a few months, people were not just giving away the $5 of the budget, they were giving away the money they got too. It catches fire. People just start feeling good. They start feeling like they're on a team. And all it takes is a couple $100 a month. Come on.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. It works.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, as we start to wind this up, any kind of final thoughts or closing ideas or other things that are kind of bubbled up to the surface that you think are important enough to add in?
I would just end the same way I ended our last one, which is vision, people, processes, right? Leadership, you have to have a vision. The vision attracts the right people to the team, and the people put the processes in place. Sounds very simple, but as a leader, you've got to have a vision that's compelling. You've got to have carrots to attract people. That vision is what's going to attract people. But then you have to let go of the vision enough to allow your team to actually do what they do best, which is put those processes in place to really scale your organization.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, they tell them where we're going. That's the vision. Believe that the people closest to process often know what the problems are and what the solutions to them are. Psychologically safe work environment where dissent is golden, right? Express it constructively. Don't bring me problems, bring me ideas and solutions, right? So when they show up and, oh, I think we're behind. Okay, thank you. Don't shoot the messenger. What do you think we should do about it? Right? Let's go. So the right mindset, the right attitude, being a respectful, inclusive, safe leader that people can trust, meeting them where they're at according to their needs, character, personality, and ambition, right? It sounds like a lot and it's hard to do, but it's not that hard once you let go of the positional power you have and start treating people like they're your sibling, not your child. How would you
Got
treat your brother or sister?
Got it. This has really gelled something for me because I have a mantra where I keep on telling, clients I work with that it's the customer journey that dictates the platform build. But what I'm seeing from hearing like both of your perspectives is that when you have this crystal clear customer journey and it only has one job, it tells the customer where they are and that it's safe to take the next step. But when it's that clear, then the customer knows, what the next step is, and whoever's job it is to serve them knows too. And I think that kind of clarity, there's no price you can put on it, I guess, because it kind of makes it all the stuff you both spoke about accessible, right? To both the customer and the support person or the salesperson or the onboarding person or like whoever it is inside of that customer journey, they know exactly what's coming,
Yeah.
how to do it, where to do it, and how to tell if it's off.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what a lot of organizations miss.
Mhm.
If that is your organization, not you, Jacob, but speaking to the audience in general, reach out to us, Rob, me, Jacob. We can help you fix this. Like, you don't have to suffer through this. You can build a team that can scale with you, that absolutely loves to serve your customers, and build something that will endure the test of time and do it very profitably, might I add.
Yeah. And I think fundamentally that's why there's three of us here, is like having conversations with you individually. And then as a group, I saw how like no amount of labor I could ever do would solve the problem in its entirety.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
gents. As always, a great conversation. It's so wonderful to be part of the B2B Growth Lab.
It's fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah. See you next Tuesday.
See you.